Ancient religious texts often feel distant and irrelevant, Andrew. But what if I told you there's a 2,500-year-old book that reads like a modern one guide to processing collective trauma and finding hope in crisis?
That's quite a claim, Pappy. Which text are we talking about here?
The Book of Baruch was written during the Babylonian exile, and here's what's fascinating. It's essentially a crisis management manual wrapped in ancient scripture. Baruch was Jeremiah's scribe, basically the ancient equivalent of a high level political advisor, documenting one of the most traumatic events in Jewish history.
So this was written during that massive forced relocation when Babylon conquered Jerusalem, right?
Exactly, and get this, historians estimate that around 10,000 Jewish elites were forcibly relocated. We're talking about the entire educated class, religious leaders, artisans, anyone who could potentially organize resistance. The psychological impact was devastating.
That's massive. How does someone even begin to address trauma on that scale?
Well, that's where it gets exciting. The text uses a three-phase trauma recovery model recognized by modern psychologists. First, there's acknowledgement and concession, the collective we messed up phase. Then there's this beautiful exploration of wisdom and meaning making. Finally, it moves into hope and restoration.
So you're saying this ancient text basically pioneered modern trauma therapy approaches?
In many ways, yes. And here's something fascinating. Studies of modern refugee populations show remarkably similar psychological patterns, the same stages of processing collective trauma, maintaining cultural identity, and finding hope for restoration.
That's incredible. How does the actual text structure this progression?
So it starts with this raw, honest confession section. Imagine a group therapy session in writing. But then, and this is where it gets really creative, it introduces a literary device in which Jerusalem itself becomes a character, speaking as mother mourning her lost children.
Well, that's a powerful way to personalize collective grief. Does this personification continue throughout the text?
Oh, yeah, and it evolves. Jerusalem starts as this grieving mother, but transforms into a voice of hope and wisdom. You know how modern therapists talk about reframing the narrative? That's exactly what's happening here, just 2,500 years earlier.
How does this compare to other ancient texts dealing with exile and displacement?
That's a great question. Unlike many other exile narratives that focus purely on lamentation or prophecy, Baruch creates this sophisticated psychological framework. And get this, archaeological evidence suggests this text was widely copied and distributed among exiled communities, indicating it really resonated with its audience.
You mentioned wisdom as a key theme. What kind of wisdom are we talking about?
So here's where it gets really countercultural. Baruch basically says, look at all these powerful people, these wealthy merchants, these great rulers. None of them have found true wisdom. Instead, he argues that wisdom comes through understanding divine law and learning from collective experience.
That's quite different from how we often think about wisdom today.
Exactly. And here's what modern scholars find fascinating. The text manages to balance this universal wisdom with practical advice for survival in exile. It's like reading an ancient self help book that actually works.
How do you think this text might speak to people facing displacement today?
Well, considering we're currently experiencing the largest refugee crisis since World War II, with over 80 million people displaced globally, these themes are incredibly relevant. The book addresses questions that modern refugees still grapple with. How do you maintain identity in a foreign land? How do you process collective trauma? How do you balance remembering the past with hoping for the future?
That really brings home how universal these experiences are.
And here's what I find most powerful: the text doesn't offer easy answers or magical solutions. Instead, it provides this framework for processing trauma and finding meaning that's remarkably similar to what modern psychologists recommend. It's like this ancient roadmap for resilience that still works today.
So, what's the key takeaway for modern readers?
I think it's this idea that hope isn't about denying reality or expecting magical solutions. It's about acknowledging loss, finding meaning through wisdom, and believing in the possibility of restoration, whether literal or metaphorical. In our world of increasing displacement and change, that message feels more relevant than ever.